Hello, everyone. So there's a lot of news to cover. I wanted to talk about the recent story with the DNC and Donna Brazile writing in Politico about how Clinton basically rigged everything. Before we get to that, though, I just wanted to cover something that's actually very pressing and we need to focus on is Trump's tax plan, or just the GOP tax plan, I should say. Of course, Trump would have to sign it, but my view, Trump is not someone who's obviously going to be well versed in talking policy, but he's not that equipped to do that, and he hasn't. I mean, like if he was, then he'd be out there, talking about the tax plan, and he, tweets these things that are basically just talking points and incoherent ones at that, because like it's not really the only ideology that's there is just Republicans, we have to pass something, we're going to work together, go do something, and blame the Democrats for opposing us all the time, even though yeah, that's what we did under Obama. But regardless, this is a disaster. Massive giveaways to the wealthiest out there. Taxing the interest on student loans. This is no way respectable. It basically, like, to me, like, it just goes farther and farther right all the time, and I don't know, where that emanates from. Is it because they think they're just going to appeal to the most far right people out there, and that's Trump's base? I mean, that's probably the case, but at the same time, um, most people are not that far right on a number of issues like that. I mean, with the economy, you probably do have people that are more conservative, but certainly they don't want to see middle class people have to suffer in this way that's being outlined in the plan. So I think you'll see a lot of people, even though they might be in favor of cutting taxes for the wealthy, big business, whatever, they don't in turn say, like, we should be increasing the tax burden on the middle class and making things harder for them. You don't hear them saying that, but that's what the Republicans do. So at some point, I feel like you have to just call out the BS, say, like, this is not what you ran on, Trump. This has, no real positive impact on the middle class and only on the wealthy. You're doing the bidding of the establishment, and you ran on the whole, like, drain the swamp. This is, we know this is on record, but they act like we can't go back and see this. So I'm going to go through an article in the Washington Post, kind of outlining generally who the winners and losers are. And I'll read some quotes here. Doing winners first, big corporations. American mega businesses, would get a substantial tax reduction. The bill cuts the top rate that large corporations pay from 35% to 20%, the biggest one-time drop in the big business tax rate ever. On top of that, companies would get some new tax breaks to help lower their bills, such as the ability to deduct all the costs of purchasing new equipment, as well as a special low rate on any money they bring back, to the United States from low tax countries such as Ireland. A special low rate. So in other words, we're going to keep your taxes low even if you're offshoring your money and you're paying like nothing on it right now. Um, you know, and by the time that happens, with all these deductions and all these ways you can just do things in this investment world, it's gonna be no difference. It's gonna still effectively be the same situation we're in, where corporations buy policy. Um, So that's what I have to say on that. So then this says the super rich, the estate tax, often called the death tax, by its critics. And this is, absolutely absurd. Like, when I remember growing up hearing the death tax, like, I thought that was ridiculous, but, like, you wouldn't think that it's the same thing as the estate tax unless someone told you, and that's in fact the case. So they're trying to get rid of the estate tax. It'll go away by 2024. And at the moment, only estates worth over 5.49 million face the estate tax. I'm going to repeat that. Only estates worth over 5.49 million face the estate tax. So you're talking about people that are literally super wealthy. You want to make things easier for that person. And by the way, look, I'm not saying take all of their money. I'm saying you can definitely figure out some way that's fair to tax something that's over $5.49 million. And it doesn't have to be all of it. I mean, what's 10% of that? I mean, that's definitely a lot of money to a lot of people that are struggling right now. So all that I would be saying is, if you want to talk about like decreasing the debt, which Republicans love to do all the time, having these tax breaks on the wealthy is not you're not going to cut taxes on the wealthy, have significantly less money coming in from them, and reduce the debt. You're just not. That's not how taxes work at all, and the economy works. This idea of trickle down, as I've said many times, has been debunked. It's basically 3 times in our history we've seen that it causes catastrophe in the economy. It may not be right the very second that you implement those policies, but down the line, yes, that's what happens. There's 2 other categories here that are winners. I'm not going to go over those. The losers are home builders. The legislation would cut in half the mortgage interest deduction used by millions of American homeowners, changing the deductions rules of new mortgages. Presently, Americans can deduct interest payments made on their first $1 million worth of home loans. Under the bill for new mortgages, they would be able to deduct interest payments made only on their first $500,000 worth of home loans. So again, this is an example of making things for the middle class harder. You're talking about the ability to deduct interest payments only at a lower point than what we have now, half of what it is now. Says some small business owners. The National Federation of Independent Business, which represents 325,000 small businesses, said it would not support the GOP bill because it leaves too many small businesses behind. The original idea was to lower small businesses' taxes to 25%, but the language in the bill allows small business owners to pay only 30% of their business income at the 25% rate. The rest would be paid at the business owner's individual tax rate. Any individuals earning over $200,000 a year, or couples earning more than $260,000, would pay the rest of their taxes at a rate of 35%. So someone who's in that range, $200,000 a year, that's more or less like a upper middle class range. But still, you have to take into account the fact that if you're going to do that, if you want to do that to someone making $200,000 or a couple making $260,000, then why do the bigger businesses that make much more money than that? Why do they get to have a tax rate at 20%? Just doesn't really make sense. If anything, you should be flipped, right? Shouldn't it be flipped? The 35% of let's say 10 million, that's going to be much better. if you have the other rate for 200,000 at 20% of that, um, it's a lot of money either way on the rich person's side. Um, so you're talking about, I mean, lowering these rates so much because of what can be done in our current system. Um, a lot of these big wealthy people, a lot of them are of course donors, um, and contribute a lot of money to politics. So of course their interest is in lowering their taxes. I mean, it shouldn't be that surprising. Um, then people in high tax blue states say goodbye to most of the state and local tax deductions. SALT over a third of filers, excuse me, in many Democratic states such as California, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut claim the SALT deduction on their returns. Under the GOP plan, people would still be able to deduct up to $10,000 on the property taxes they pay locally, but they would no longer be able to deduct the other taxes they pay to state or local governments from their federal tax payments. So again, another example, making things harder for the middle class. Meanwhile, the wealthy, have at it, whatever you want, basically. The working poor are hurt. Charities are hurt by this tax plan. So, I've outlined here how it's entirely a giveaway to the wealthy, and it's always kind of been that way. But now it's just amped up to levels that are, quite extreme. So then we get to the DNC story, the future of the Democratic Party, which lies with Bernie and that type of politics, the progressive side of things. The establishment corporate Democrats are not cutting it. I mean, let's be real, they're mostly older people that are just out of touch. Not just out of touch because of how, comparatively to people who are just average middle class, much more wealthy. But yeah, the fact that they can't just operate politically in this environment, in this 21st century that we're living in. And I say this because they act like we can't just go and look at these videos on record and what their record is. Like people like Dianne Feinstein, who've, they voted on the Patriot Act, actually kind of, crafting the Patriot Act, voting for the Iraq War. When it comes to healthcare, she's saying the same, Republican talking points. We need access to healthcare. Nancy Pelosi, who's like obsessed with calling herself a master legislator, which, I mean, she's just priding herself on her ability to sell out to corporations and fundraise. And meanwhile, yeah, the Democratic Party's in debt, which I'll get into. But it's all just according to, I'm popular, basically. Like, I'm a master legislator. Everyone knows me as that, or something. So, like, you're just a silly person. Joe Manchin, another idiot, in my opinion. I mean, this guy, when it comes to climate, he's awful. I mean, he was for repealing the stream protection rule. That makes it so that your water is not protected in places that are affected by coal. And then healthcare, same thing. He's like hardly even on board with Obamacare, from what I gather listening to him. Like he's like hardly at that point. And then down all the other issues is awful. I mean, I remember he said with the war on drugs, we should start a war on drugs, basically, as if we haven't already been doing that. then Chuck Schumer, you know, Chuck Schumer will occasionally say some things that I kind of, can't disagree with, even though, yeah, I'll separate the fact that, yeah, his, policy wise, what he's supported is probably different from the rhetoric. So you gotta, you know, view a difference in that. Excuse me. But he praised Jeff Flake on Twitter after Jeff Flake decided to step down from the Senate because Trump is so bad. Apparently, this is the absolute epitome to me of how silly the Democrats are. Because you're praising someone like Jeff Flake for condemning Trump and stepping down from your term when it's up. Meanwhile, Jeff Flake voted for Trump's policies 90% of the time. So this is not about policy with the Democrats. This is about still, red team versus blue team. The irony of these people wanting to be called the Democratic Party, and yet they actively block out the surge of populism on the progressive issues across the board. I mean, we have now, before this Donna Brazile story, a report that progressives in the DNC, Bernie supporters, Keith Ellison supporters, were ousted out of the DNC by Tom Perez. I think it was like 75 of them were ousted, and no, it was 75. I think lobbyists that were put in their place. So there you have it. I mean, they're not interested in changing their direction as a party, and you can tell that because of who is surrounding the DNC, who is being given the power. What are they doing with that power? They're talking about a unity tour, like with Tom Perez and Bernie. What they're doing is holding up Bernie as a mascot and not going through the actual motions to adopt his policies. If they wanted to have unity with Bernie supporters, then they would come out and say, we're going to not accept any more corporate donations, or donations from billionaires, like Justice Democrats, like this shirt that I'm wearing. They would do that if they cared about corruption, dealing with that, and money in politics, but they don't. I mean, this is exactly why they continue to thrive, because they're being built up by these big money donors. So people make their voices clear in town halls all over the world, and they say that the healthcare debate has shifted. I mean, look, people will say that the ACA, Obamacare, did good things for them. They'll certainly say that. And I don't think anyone who wants universal health care, who supports Medicare for all, they're not supporting repealing the ACA. They're just saying we need to build upon that. But someone like Dianne Feinstein makes it look like those things are mutually exclusive, and if you're going to be in favor of Medicare for all, then you must agree that we have to stop defending the ACA. No one's ever saying that. So that's such a straw man argument. They invest all their time in defending it, not wanting to fix any of the problems and ineffectiveness that is occurring. I mean, 28 million people are still uninsured, and something like 40,000 die every year because they don't have access to health care. It's also true that Trump is actively trying to sabotage the ACA and defund it. So I understand the inclination to try and defend it at all costs, especially when Republicans have the majority. But what we've seen is that the Republicans are not up to the task. They just can't. They can't agree amongst themselves. So the time is now for the Democrats to show that we're actually going to just we're going to beat them at their own game twice. I mean, we passed their compromise. The former right-wing compromise was the individual mandate system, which is the ACA. We passed that, and now we're going to just expand it. And this is, of course, if the Republicans don't wreck everything with a giant wrecking ball, but the Democrats' reluctance to be unified themselves is a problem. So they have to get their act together. And, Tom Perez is not someone who's in a good position to do that, because he's not... He's interested in basically getting as much support as he can without really changing much in the party. I mean, he doesn't make public appearances. I mean, he used to a little bit, but now that's gone out. I mean, it's probably because he understands people don't like him. People boo him all the time when he's speaking. So it's always just like pushing people up that no one likes and the establishment loves. I mean, Obama basically got him that position by calling people in the DNC days before the election. Talk about, interfering in an election. Well, so the party has to be unified, but behind a strong leftist ideology. People are afraid to view it that way, but the fact is the Democrats love caving to the Republicans. Okay, so the point that I would want to make to everyone is it's not as if these leftist policies that I'm talking about that the Democrats should espouse, it's not something in recent years that has been seriously put at the forefront. I don't know for sure what the last time would be. Maybe Al Gore. When you're talking about like Medicare for all, you'd have to go down all the different issues. But Obama was not for Medicare for all or single payer, I should say. So the party has shifted to the right, and that's if you want to blame the Republicans for that, fine, I guess. But the Democrats need to take it upon themselves to not be half crazy. Like the Republicans are so far gone that when the Democrats try to compromise with them, they become half, insane. So that's not good. The Democrats have to, stand above the fray, and that's that's really what the whole when they go low, we go high thing should mean, that Michelle Obama said. It should be not just about how we talk and how we act, because I already know that's what she was talking about. She's talking about the fact that Trump is like a crude person. I don't particularly care about that so much. I care about what he does. So we should take the high road on policy as well, and call a spade a spade. Recognize that corruption is not just limited to the Republicans. The Democrats suffer from this problem as well. So we're going to get into that now with the Donna Brazile story. So I'm going to say this before I read from it. Beyond anything specifically that would be considered rigging the election, the fact of the matter is the Clinton campaign engaged in something that is explicitly going against one of the prime functions of the DNC. The DNC is supposed to be something that is independently run. You have two candidates that are running in a primary against each other for the Democratic nomination, and the DNC facilitates this process. They aren't supposed to have any say from any of the candidates. It's supposed to be independent in that respect. And this is not what happened, as I'm going to read now from a piece Donna Brazile released on November 2nd, in Politico. I'm going to read a few excerpts, excuse me. But I think it's important to kind of go through this and understand why it's not just that the primary was rigged. The fact of the matter is it was just corrupt from the start, and the idea that we're going to be pushing this candidate, Hillary Clinton, at the forefront, and Bernie had to fight tooth and nail just to get to where he was. The fact that Hillary was pushed so much at the forefront by everyone in the establishment, despite of what is detailed in this article. I mean, Donna Brazile clearly knew, and she says that she knew a lot of this stuff during the election. The fact that this is not talked about, and it's only coming out now after, of course, the election's over and Trump won. This is a huge problem. So, to a degree, I appreciate the transparency that Donna Brazile is offering up now. It definitely allows us to just see what happened, learn from the problem, so on. But it's certainly frustrating that this wasn't talked about before. And the reason I say with Hillary being at the forefront is because everyone was afraid of her chances at winning. It was always on the brink, and anything negative about Clinton, any criticism was just deemed, you can't go there. And that's the whole point of Hillary's book. She's like going after Bernie and saying that he tarnished her in so many ways and set up the crooked Hillary campaign that Donald Trump employed on her in the general. It's like I don't even know how to connect these things quite, but whether it was in spite of or a consequence of, but just like you can't talk about money in politics and corruption and campaign finance reform when you're part of the problem, Hillary Clinton and Debbie Wasserman Schultz. You are not going to address these problems in a serious way because they would directly affect you and the way that you do business. So, finally, let me get to the Donna Brazile article. So, I followed the money. My predecessor, Florida Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz, had not been the most active chair in fundraising at a time when President Barack Obama's neglect had left the party in significant debt. As Hillary's campaign gained momentum, she resolved the party's debt and put it on a starvation diet. It had become dependent on her campaign for survival, for which she expected to wield control of its operations. Debbie was not a good manager. She hadn't been very interested in controlling the party. She let Clinton's headquarters in Brooklyn do as it desired, so she didn't have to inform the party officers how bad the situation was. How much control Brooklyn had, and for how long, was still something I had been trying to uncover for the last few weeks. By September 7th, the day I called Bernie, I'd found my proof, and it broke my heart. Saturday morning after the convention in July, I called Gary Gensler, the chief financial officer of Hillary's campaign. He wasted no words. He told me the Democrat Party was broke and $2 million in debt. What? I screamed. This is Donna Brazile. I am an officer of the party, and they've been telling me everything is fine. And they were raising money with no problems. This wasn't true, he said. Officials from Hillary's campaign had taken a look at the DNC's books. Obama left the party $24 million in debt, $15 million in bank debt, and more than $8 million owed to vendors after the 2012 campaign, and had been paying that off very slowly. Obama's campaign was not scheduled to be paid off until 2016. Hillary for America, the campaign, and the Hillary Victory Fund, its joint fundraising vehicle with the DNC, had taken care of 80% of the remaining debt in 2016, about $10 million, and had placed the party on an allowance. I'm going to skip down a little bit. She says, Gary, how did they do this without me knowing? I asked. I don't know how Debbie relates to the officers, Gary said. He described the party as fully under the control of Hillary's campaign, which seemed to confirm the suspicions of the Bernie camp. The campaign had the DNC on life support, giving it money every month to meet its basic expenses, while the campaign was using the party as a fundraising clearinghouse. Under FEC law, an individual can contribute a maximum of $2,700 directly to a presidential campaign, but the limits are much higher for contributions to state parties and a party's national committee. Individuals who had maxed out their $2,700 contribution limit to the campaign could write an additional check for $353,400 to the Hillary Victory Fund. That figure represented $10,000 to each of the 32 states parties who were part of the Victory Fund agreement, $320,000 and $33,400 to the DNC. The money would be deposited in the states first, transferred to the DNC shortly after that. Money in the battleground states usually stayed in that state, but all the other states funneled the money funneled that money directly to the DNC, which quickly transferred the money to Brooklyn. Wait, I said, that victory fund was supposed to be for whoever was the nominee, and the state party races. You're telling me that Hillary has been controlling it since before she got the nomination? Gary said the campaign had to do it or the party would collapse. That was the deal that Robbie struck with Debbie, he explained, referring to a campaign manager, Robbie Mook. It was to sustain the DNC. We sent the party nearly $20 million from September until the convention and more to prepare for the election. So I'm just going to pause for a sec. This tells you right here that, and she does, go into greater detail in the article, but this was not, it's not as if Hillary was doing this and saying like, yeah, I'm not going to, run the DNC. No, like, the deal was Debbie Wasserman Schultz basically didn't do anything. She sat back and let the Hillary campaign do whatever they wanted. And they were in charge of everything, strategy, financing, and all that. So that is a clear indication that the DNC is not functioning the way it's supposed to. If it's not, in fact, independent from one of the candidates that's running, then it doesn't serve the purpose it's supposed to, right? So continuing on, yet the states kept less than half of 1% of the $82 million they had amassed from the extravagant fundraisers Hillary's campaign was holding, just as Gary had described to me when he and I talked in August. When the Politico story described this arrangement as essentially money laundering for the Clinton campaign, Hillary's people were outraged at being accused of doing something shady. Bernie's people were angry for their own reasons, saying this was part of a calculated strategy to throw the nomination. So later she says, I last found the document that described it all, the joint fundraising agreement between the DNC, the Hillary Victory Fund, and Hillary for America. The agreement signed by Amy Dacey, the former CEO of the DNC, Robbie Mook with a copy to Mark Elias, specified that in exchange for raising money and investing in the DNC, Hillary would control the party's finances, strategy, and all the money raised. Her campaign had the right of refusal of who would be the party's communications director. It would make final decisions on all the other staff. The DNC also was required to consult with the campaign about all other staffing, budgeting, data analytics, and mailings. I had been wondering, this is Donna Brazile talking, I had been wondering why was that I couldn't write a press release without passing it by Brooklyn. Well, here was my answer. There you have it. Controls the party's finances, strategy, and all the money raised, all the other staff. they had the right of refusal for being party communications director. So, if literally all the people in the DNC are at Hillary's hand, if they're handpicked by her, essentially, her campaign, how is that in any way even-handed a process? And, I mean, take into account all the other stuff that we know. The fact that the superdelegates chose Hillary, like before there was even a primary. What about the debate schedules being tucked away by Debbie Wasserman Schultz so that they were hand-selected time slots that were not likely people were going to watch them? This is all by design. This is all just a way for money laundering your campaign, as it says. And the reason why she had to do this was because, like I say, she was not interested in running a policy-oriented campaign. If she were, would it only 25% of her ads be focused on policy? A quarter of your ads were focused on policy, Hillary Clinton. So don't tell me you're a serious politician and that you care about everyday people when you don't even want to talk about, real issues more than you don't want to do that more than half the time. We can see right through you. She funneled money in there, basically because she was just trying to prop herself up. It was all about image. It was all about, I'm going to be, this president who's very, I'm what's the word I'm looking for? I'm qualified to be president because of all my accolades and all these things. And by the way, her record just sucks. I mean, it's kind of like Dianne Feinstein. I mean, she was not good on foreign policy. Still is not good on foreign policy. Not for Medicare for all, single payer. She was not a progressive. She was not someone that was going to excite people, and that in fact happened. She underperformed Obama, very significantly. And with millennials, I can tell you, specifically with millennials, third-party voters in 2012 was at 3%. For 2016, it was 8%. So her strategy was just, toe the line, toe the party line, vote for me because I'm a Democrat. It wasn't based on, I'm going to reach this camp, this progressive coalition of Bernie supporters and people that are, very upset about the establishment and they want to see certain changes. I'm not going to cave to them on, any of the things that I could mention, whether it be healthcare, foreign policy, the drug war, and so on. With economics, I mean, she was a neoliberal through and through. I mean, she was just for the mealy-mouthed approach when it comes to Wall Street. She says all the time, like, oh yeah, I talked to them and I waved my finger at them. Well, what did you actually do to regulate Wall Street and enforce the law in that respect? And you want to say Dodd-Frank. Dodd-Frank has, so many loopholes. It didn't, according to multiple experts really that look into it, it's just not, it's a mediocre legislation at best. And just the Democratic platform was watered down progressivism. It was meant to be just, kind of the appearance of progressivism. When it comes to foreign policy, though, I mean, it was all the same. I mean, Obama said we were going to get out of the wars in the Middle East. Now they don't even pretend to want to do that. They're just like, we're going to ensure your safety. Well, what if you being there is actually not ensuring our safety? It's actually kind of making things worse as you're killing more civilians and creating more terrorists. The drug war, I mean, it's certainly true. I think Hillary probably wouldn't have been as bad when it comes to the drug war. I mean, she wouldn't have picked Jeff Sessions. Why can't I talk today? Jeff Sessions. Whoa. Jeff Sessions. There we go. He's definitely pretty bad on that issue, but this is just one of those things where you could have gotten a lot of younger people to support you if you were in favor of something more progressive, like ending the drug war, or at least decriminalizing marijuana. It was a public option, not Medicare for all, as I said. She was just trying to raise as much money as she could for the DNC, and it was broke. And my opinion on the matter is, I mean, even though I don't think she should have been the one to do it, well, should she have the right to raise money for the DNC? She should have the right to inject money in there as a private citizen, but she was running for public office. This is why it's wrong, okay? And I don't agree with it either way, because I don't think that it should be a private enterprise. I think we should have publicly financed elections. We need a constitutional amendment to get money out of politics. And this is what Justice Democrats is about. It's what Wolfpack is about. The problem with the DNC is the fact that it's essentially a corporation that is working to further its own benefit, not the benefit of the people. As a group, as a collection of people that are mostly wealthy, they did not have the foresight to understand that setting the DNC up in this way was going to be detrimental to them. Even despite the fact that we didn't know about it until now, of course, in full detail. We knew that Debbie Wasserman Schultz was basically in Hillary's pocket, but we didn't get the extent of just how bad it was until now. It still hurt Hillary in the end, if not because of the fact that she lost to Trump. It hurt her because it was all just about kind of just damage control and a cover-up. It was about trying to prove why she should be president. And even her friends they've come out and said, like, I didn't know why she was running to be president. Her time is up. Like I'm saying, her style of politics is that of Obama's when he governed, Bill Clinton. It's neoliberalism, and it's had its day, and it's gone now. The left is becoming serious about real change, and we're showing them that by having candidates run as Justice Democrats against corporate Democrats. I believe Allison Hartson is the one running against Dianne Feinstein now. You have Paula Jean Swearengin running against Joe Manchin in West Virginia. And then we also do have one Justice Democrat in the House of Representatives, I believe, Ro Khanna, who he became a Justice Democrat after he entered office. But this shows that the popularity surrounding these new ideas about how a politician should be, they should be direct and not have to basically talk in circles with you. I mean, this is what Hillary was best at, just spewing platitudes and cliches time and time again. and it was just words that didn't mean anything. You listen to someone like Ro Khanna or Paula Jean Swearengin, they're talking like a average person would. They're talking about how policy affects them personally. In the case of Paula Jean Swearengin, with the coal companies running amok and the government not doing their job and regulating it, it's you don't have to think about what they're saying, and you don't have to play this guessing game about like what they stand for, which you did with Hillary, because she was so vague. She didn't want to stand for anything. She didn't want to offend anyone. Bernie is not like that. Bernie stands up, for what he believes in, even if it's unpopular to some people. Even though a lot of his policies actually resonate with the majority of Americans in this country today.